Hi everyone! In this video, we're going to take a look at the inspector view in SwiftUI and we'll build a small macOS demo app. The inspector is that familiar panel we often see in macOS apps, where we select something and see additional details in a separate panel. Even though this demo is a macOS app, it's worth mentioning that the inspector also exists on iPadOS, while on iPhone it appears as a model sheet. So, the concept stays the same, but SwiftUI adapts the presentation depending on the platform. Before jumping into the code, let's quickly see what this sample app is all about. Inspector demo is intentionally very simple. It shows a list of fake files, text files, markdown files, PDFs and images. When we select a file, we can open an inspector panel and display extra information about it. There is no real file system involved here. We are not opening documents, we are not reading metadata from disk. Everything is fake on purpose, so we can focus entirely on the inspector view. To support this, we use a very small data model. Each file is represented by a file item. It has an ID, so SwiftUI can track it correctly, and then a few properties that make sense for the inspector. The file name, the file type, the size, the modification date, and a read-only flag. The file type is an std_num. Besides describing the kind of file, it also provides a readable label and a system icon name. And finally, we define a sample files array with just a handful of items, enough to make the demo feel realistic. Now let's move on to the main view. At the center of the app, we have a list that displays those sample files. Each row shows an icon, the file name, and the file type. We also support selection, because selecting an item is a key part of how the inspector works. The actual selected file item is defined in the onChange modifier every time the value of the selection state property changes. And you'll notice that the inspector toolbar button is already there. At this point, it doesn't do anything yet, but it gives us the familiar macOS layout from the beginning. Now that we have the basic list in place, let's add the inspector. I'll go after all existing modifiers, and right here, I'm adding the inspector modifier. This modifier expects two things: a value that controls whether the inspector is visible, and a view that defines the inspector's content. To control when the inspector appears, we need a new state property. So, I'll add a new one called isInspectorPresented. Now that we have the state property, we can connect it to the inspector. So here, I pass the binding value of this isInspectorPresented property. At this point, the inspector knows when it should appear, but it still doesn't know what to show. Let's fix that next. For the inspector's content, we'll use a separate view called FileDetailsView. This view expects a file item, so we pass the currently selected one. Note that this can have an actual value, but it can also be nil in case no selection is made. It's generally recommended to keep the views separate because the inspector itself is just a container. Now the inspector has a real content. Let's quickly look at FileDetailsView. This view is intentionally very focused. It receives a file item and displays its details: name, type, size, and modification date. There is no selection logic here, no actions, and no presentation state. It simply describes how the inspector content looks. Now let's make the toolbar button do something useful. The button already exists, so all we need to do is toggle the isInspectorPresented property. Clicking the button simply shows or hides the inspector. Let's run the app and see what we have so far. We select a file from the list, click the toolbar button, and the inspector appears. If we select another file, the inspector updates automatically. And if there is no selection, the inspector content updates accordingly. Clicking the button again hides it. Now let's improve the layout a bit. By default, the inspector width is very flexible, and that can feel a bit unstable. So I'll apply a fixed width to the inspector content. Note that the inspector column width modifier is applied to the content of the inspector, Let's run again to see the result. See that now the inspector has a stable and standard width. SwiftUI also gives us another option. Instead of a strict fixed value, we can define an ideal or minimum width. So, I'll switch to that approach. This gives us more flexibility while still keeping the inspector readable. Now the inspector adapts better to resizing. Which option you choose really depends on the app you are building. To wrap things up, we have built a small macOS app that demonstrates how to use the inspector view in SwiftUI. We started with a simple list and fake data, added the inspector modifier, controlled its visibility with a boolean state, displayed the details using a dedicated view, and fine-tuned the inspector's width. And even though this demo focuses on macOS, the same inspector concept exists on iPadOS, while on iPhone it appears as a modal sheet. That's it for this video. If you prefer reading, you'll find a text tutorial on the same topic linked in the video description, covering exactly what we discussed here. And if you found this video useful, feel free to like it and subscribe to the channel. It really helps and lets you know when new SwiftUI videos are published. Thanks for watching.